Hello and welcome to this session. I'm Kevin Otieno. The government has announced plans to have Kenyan passport applications processed within a period of 1 week. Speaking on Wednesday, Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki said he had directed the Immigration Department to clear the current backlog of 42,000 passports within the next 21 days and thereafter begin issuing the travel document within 7 days. Professor Kithure Kindiki further assured that in emergency situations for applicants seeking medical and educational services, their applications must be considered and processed within 24 hours. He pointed out that the current backlog had been occasioned by the breaking down of the printing machine. Elsewhere, the Cabinet Secretary on Wednesday declined to comment on remarks linking retired President Uhuru Kenyatta to the alleged resurgence of the Mungiki group. This comes after remarks by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua on Monday, claiming that Uhuru was behind the return of the outlawed sect. Gachagua was quoted as saying that, "What do you want in this country? You occupied the highest position in this country. What else do you want? You are the richest man in this country. You literally own this country, including us. What else do you want? Hii watoto ya wenyewe unawaambia waende wapigane na polisi wawawe. Hii ni madharau gani kwa watoto ya watu maskini?" The CS, speaking in an address on the steps of Harambee House without giving evidence, asserted that there is indeed an emergence of what he described as cultural extremism. He went ahead to cite the central Kenya and Rift Valley regions as areas experiencing the rise of these extremist groups. The Interior boss, however, declined to comment on remarks by the Deputy President linking the former head of state to the said crime. Kenya has received 34,400 tons of raw fertilizer donated by the government of Russia. Agriculture and Livestock Development Cabinet Secretary Mithika Linturi, who received the consignment in Mombasa on Wednesday, says the fertilizer will be sold to farmers across the 34 counties under the fertilizer subsidy program. A cabinet secretary said the government was committed to improving food productivity by lowering the cost of farm inputs. Linturi said 2.8 million bags of the subsidized fertilizer had already been distributed. A total of 100,200 tons of reformulated fertilizer will be produced from the 34,400 tons received on Wednesday. Kenyan police were involved in the killing of 12 people, including 2 children, during violent opposition demonstrations in March, 2 rights groups said on Wednesday, denouncing a lack of accountability. Extrajudicial killings are rife in Kenya, and justice is rare, with few examples of police being held to account. Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International said they documented 12 deaths during 3 days of anti-government protests called by veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga over a cost of living crisis and last year's disputed elections. They said in a joint statement they had, quote-unquote, corroborated 12 killings in interviews with family members and witnesses. 2 children, including a 4-month-old baby, also died from health complications after police fired tear gas into residential homes in Kibra, a densely packed slum in Nairobi, the NGOs added. According to government figures, 3 people died during the March unrest, including a policeman. Kenya's police force is often accused by rights groups of using excessive force and carrying out unlawful killings, especially in poor neighborhoods. And on to some international news, and one of Africa's most celebrated authors and playwrights, Ghanaian Ama Ata Aidoo, has died aged 81. A renowned feminist, she depicted and celebrated the condition of African women in works such as The Dilemma of a Ghost, Our Sister Killjoy, and Changes. She opposed what she described as a quote-unquote Western perception that the African female is a downtrodden wretch. She also served as education minister in the early 80s, but resigned when she could not make education free. In a statement, her family said, Our beloved relative and writer passed away after a short illness, requesting privacy to allow them to grieve. A university professor, Aja Ida won many literary awards for her novels, plays, and poems, including the 1992 Commonwealth Writers' Prize for Changes, a love story about a statistician who divorces her first husband and enters into a polygamous marriage. Zimbabwe will hold nationwide elections on August the 23rd, the government gazette said Wednesday, ending months of speculation over the date. The government's official record, seen by AFP, said President Emmerson Mnangagwa fixes the 23rd day of August 2023 as the day of the election to the office of president. Elections for the National Assembly and local government will also be held that day. Mnangagwa's ZANU-PF party, which has been in power since independence in 1980, will face off against the Citizens Coalition for Change, or CCC, led by Nelson Chamisa, a 45-year-old lawyer and pastor. He will be Mnangagwa's opponent for a second time. Chamisa on Tuesday called on Mnangagwa to set a date for the poll after prolonged uncertainty and flip-flops. The CCC also cried foul over the electoral roll, saying many voters, including some senior politicians, had their names removed or misplaced on the register. Zimbabwe, a country landlocked between Mozambique, South Africa, Botswana, and Zambia, has a population of 15 million people, according to the latest census. Mnangagwa replaced strongman ruler Robert Mugabe in 2017 in a military coup, but faces widespread criticism of authoritarianism and discontent over the economy. The country has been plagued for years by deepening poverty, chronic power cuts, and crippling hyperinflation. In 2018, Mnangagwa, dubbed the crocodile for his political cunning, narrowly won a violence-stained election with 50.8% of the vote, a result which Chamisa denounced as a fraud. And that's the latest from me, Kevin Otieno.